part of the Malawi Institution of Engineers Women's Chapter, and I've been running the Women's Malawi project since its inception in 2016. A brief summary of who I am. I am a civil engineer mom, mother of one boy, but also through my love for and passion for the engineering industry, I think I'm a civil engineer mom to many young upcoming civil engineers. I'm a graduate member of the Malawi Board of Engineers and also a member of the Malawi Institution of Engineers. So Malawi Board of Engineers is the professional body where young graduates finish their professional certification and get examined. I'm currently the Women's Malawi country lead. I think my role has changed over the years from program coordinator to now Women's Malawi country lead. I'm the technical services director for a local Malawian consulting engineering firm on both their Malawi and international projects, particularly the current one in Ethiopia, in Gondar in Ethiopia. I am now a member of the advisory board for the African Drone and Data Academy that is being run by Virginia Tech University. As an advisory board member, particularly because of my role with Women's Malawi. Malawi Institution of Engineers collaboration with Women's Global started in 2016, where at a SAFEO conference in Zimbabwe, Southern African Federation of Engineering Organizations, our former president at the time, I think met one of the co-founders, either Nadia or Hema. And at the time, they had done a presentation on Women's Global, and he realized that this was a potential that could actually help women engineers in Malawi. And he brought the idea back to Malawi. In October 2016, he initiated for the MIE to fund 2 female engineers from the leadership team, Engineer Susan Bonda, who's the current MIE Women's Chapter Chairperson, former Vice President, Engineer Professor Teresa Nkanawire, and I was self-funded as a student from the Malawi Polytechnic. I self-funded, my parents self-funded the trip for me. Through then, after we attended the Emerging Engineering Leadership Program, we realized that at the end of the program, we needed to sit down with the co-founders, Nadia and Hema, and look towards bringing their programs to Malawi. In August 2017, we had our first leadership training that was done by Nadia Musaji. And through the months between October and August, we had to show our initiative to Women's Global that we were serious about bringing Women's Global to Malawi. And so we wrote a budget and presented that to our institution body, Malawi, the MIE, and they were able to provide us with funding, and we were able to fly Nadia into Malawi and have the 3-day training that we had. In November 2017, we officially launched Women's Malawi at the MIE conference together. It was also a SAFEO conference because at the time, the chairperson of SAFEO was engineer Dr. Ngoma, who was from Malawi, and now the roles were changing. And so they had the conference here, and Hema, together with members of the leadership team of the Women's Chapter and other members of the Women's Chapter as well, we launched Women's Malawi. In 2018, which is the story of now, in 2017, December, we did get an email. Our then former president did get an email, and the 2 women that participated in EDLP, that women had received a grant from the Royal Academy of Engineering, and Malawi was a part of that grant. This is the first leadership training we did with Nadia in 2017. Indeed, it has been a long time. And this is the time that we launched in 2017, November, we launched Women's Malawi with the first ever Girl Lunch program, which was the first women's program we did in Malawi that was done in Mangochi at St. Michael's Secondary School, all girls secondary school. And as you can see, there also frontline, you can see members of the women's chapter that were in attendance, and Susan is in the photo as well. And so the story of Women's Malawi started with us 3. Professor Teresa Nkanawire, the former president of the MIE, and also the first female dean of engineering in Malawi, the former dean of engineering at the University of Malawi, UNIMA, the Polytechnic, Engineer Susan Bonda, who obviously is the Women's Chapter chairperson and also has been a structural engineer in Malawi for over 15 years now. And me, I was the student, at the time I was still in varsity. but that was my 2017 was my graduating year. Since our inception, we have a volunteer leadership team that have been pivotal to the growth of Women Malawi, and one of them has been Jennifer Manda, which I forgot to include her name in the presentation, but she's part of the participants. She's a mechanical engineer. She's a Women Malawi Southern Region Program Coordinator, and most of our programs that we've done in Malawi have been in the Southern region because most of our two big engineering universities are in the Southern region, and it was easier to also collaborate with the female engineering students who would be part of our volunteer leadership team. She is a current lecturer at Must, and also through Women's Week, she was able to form a women's engineering society on campus at the university that is being run by some of our women's ambassadors, female engineering students, and she's the patron for that engineering society. She got a distinction in her mechanical engineering degree. She's an alumni of the UNIMA, University of Malawi Polytechnic University. She has an MSc in thermal power and fluid engineering from Manchester University. This is a part of our student volunteer leadership team. They have truly been a part of the women's story. Since 2017, Christine, Mandalasi, Daisy, Hope, Omega, these were students I found, and they had a passion for engineering, they had a passion for female engineers, and they formed the Polytechnic Association of Female Engineering Students at the Polytechnic. And we said we wanted them to be our ambassadors for women, and they joined the bandwagon, and they've been a part of all our leadership trainings, and they are part of our volunteer leadership team at the universities. Currently now, it's been 3 years, and they're now in their final year, and it makes me very proud. Mwai Yelewa, a biomedical engineering student, Catherine Chaima, a chemical engineering student, who also was shortlisted for the top 5 Africa Prize Innovation competition. All of them are also women's fellows. The Africa Catalyst Grant. This is us three, the co-founders. We were in attendance in 2018, April, in South Africa for a 3-day leadership training that Women's Global had done in collaboration with the World Federation of Engineering Organization, the Federation of African Engineering Organizations, and the Royal Academy of Engineering, not forgetting CISO, the Cambridge Institute of Sustainability Leadership, and all other SADC engineering institutions that are part of this grant. One of the key things that struck us the most was the customer journey line that was taught by the Cambridge Institute of Leadership Sustainability. Not only were there 2 cool female engineers teaching us about how to run an organization, and obviously with different parameters looking at Malawi as the case. Our mission in the upcoming years was that we wanted to increase the number of influential female engineers in the development of Malawi. But now, what was the customer journey line? It was looking at the journey of a female engineer, which is the product, but what was the path of our engineer? The path of our engineer was not only through university, that immediately after high school would be selected into our prestigious engineering institutions, but some might have the journey of coming from technical colleges that are there in Malawi. Meaning, for example, an electrical engineer could start from doing an electrical diploma and then go into the workforce after that diploma certification and then decide to come back and apply for a degree level in the future. So one of the key things was that we had to make sure that as we're increasing the number of girls in STEM, as we're increasing the number of female engineers towards the development of Malawi, there were different journeys that our female engineer was going to take. And this was the customer journey line that we had formed with the 2 other co-founders during the workshop, the leadership workshop that we had for the commencement meeting. After that commencement meeting in April, we had our first leadership training with women from the women's chapter. As well, this leadership training, I think some were not in the photo, but there are about 35 female engineers. We had some from our from our different water board regions. We had the northern region water board, we have the southern region water board, we had central region water board. We had engineers from the telecommunications Malawi. That's mobile networking company here in Malawi that provides, it's one of the major, the only two, there's Airtel and TNM. So TNM also provides services. We had engineers from Ngenco, Eskom, as you may know, that's the big electricity production company in Malawi. We had female engineers from the University of Malawi, these were lecturers from there. And we had engineers from the Roads Authority. Part of the leadership training was also to add capacity for the female engineers in the industry. The EEO that I and two other co-founders, the two other co-founders did in South Africa, provided us with tools and resources to think differently and obviously added to our leadership skills in the workplace and for the future. And part of this leadership team, aside from adding value to Women's Malawi and adding value to the leadership team, this was also to add value to them, to their workplaces. And so we had this program done, and we had, as part of the Africa Catalyst training, Aditi and Letitia had to come through and help us run the program here in Malawi. Some of the women's programs that we have done over time have been the Launchpad and the Gallant. We had the Launchpad in Cholo, and we also had the Gallant in Mangochi. I was hoping to have a picture of Chikwawa. I know Aditi did it yesterday. She did put up a picture of us doing Gallant in Chikwawa. But so that was under the Africa Catalyst grant. But one of the key things that we were learning, and I'll go back to the customer journey line, was that we also needed to have sustainability beyond the grant. And so the Launchpad that we did in Cholo was improvised. As you can see, we didn't have that many hard hats. Of course, there were not only 3, there were a lot more, but we were reusing the ones we had done in Mangochi because half of them, because we had to leave some at the school for remembrance for the students at the school libraries, because we were trying to manage that. As Women's Global is an NGO and as an affiliate of that NGO, it was going to be difficult to find financial resources. And so, but we still wanted to have the outreach. And so we had, this Launchpad was in collaboration with Rice University, and they were able to fund our transport. Jennifer and some of the girls from the volunteer leadership team were a part of this Launchpad. We went to about 4 schools, if I remember. And so some of the external work, other than the 2 programs that they were funding, which is the fellowship and the Gallant, that the Africa Catalyst grant, that was part of the Africa Catalyst grant funding, we were able to do external work between 2018 and up to now. On the left, it's the Women's Malawi and Rice University collaboration. We had student engineers who came to the University of Malawi, the Polytechnic, and so together I did a minor leadership training with them, how to present themselves, how do they talk to the students, how do they engage in the students using the women's toolkits, and we were able to use those resources. As you can see, we did not have a projector. This was really in the rural areas of Cholo. Even the school, you can see that it doesn't have a proper flow, but it was the impact that we were going towards, that despite our shortcomings, how do we manage those shortcomings and still have our outreach in Malawi? On the right, this year, Rotary Club, this is a club in Malawi that is like an affiliate of alumni from different professions, and basically what they do is that they pour in their own resources. Each person pays a membership fee and they pour in their own resources, but then they do community development projects. They can go to orphanages. They've done different car wash fundraising to raise funds for needy children in different schools. And so one of the things they did was an outreach program. And so I joined the bandwagon using the women's toolkits. I did not have enough resources, but it was still something that I needed to do. How do we increase the number of females in STEM? Of course, the audience was male, and they did not separate the males and the females, but it was still an added value to the female students that were there. Another external work that Women's Malawi has done, as I was a judge for the Malawi Innovation Design Competition. And one of our third place winners was one of our women's fellows, Tadala Mtimuni. And this was an innovation design competition that was done by the two big engineering institutions in Malawi, Malawi University of Science and Technology, MUST, and UNIMA Poly. Another added value, as I said at the beginning, was that I'm a part of the advisory board for the African Drone, the first ever African Drone and Data Academy that is being funded by UNICEF and run by Virginia Tech. We've had students from across the world: Ethiopia, Botswana, Namibia, Nigeria, Ghana, and Malawi. One of the key elements in my role is to ensure that there's a 60-40 percentage of intake. 60% meaning female scientists are selected, whether engineers, mathematicians, with an undergrad in engineering or mathematics or science or any applied sciences. That those students that are being selected, 60% of every cohort must be female. And that is one of the roles that I have to do in the application process. That not only should they be competent, but that a majority of those students that are being selected are female. And that's just a snippet of one of the labs of the African Drone labs. So those drones are, the lecturers teach them and they make the drones from different parts from scratch. And so that is the graduation of the first cohort that was run this year in March. Some of the work that we've done is also with the MIE. Because of my role with Women's Malawi, the MIE Central Region chapter invited me to the Lilongwe University of Agriculture and Natural Resources, and they have two agriculture engineering courses. They have one in irrigation engineering and they have one agriculture engineering. And so I was speaking to the first year, second year, third year, and final year, fourth year and final year students, engineers from that school. So my role was to talk about job creation and innovation, and obviously how agriculture with the UN, with the Sustainable Development Goal on zero hunger, how can that be achieved by agriculture innovations in Malawi? Using some of the leadership skills and tools that we're taught from Women, that was a part of the external work that I did with MIE. And another one that we did on the right, it's an earthquake assimilation toolkit. So we collaborated with Virginia Tech Society of Women Engineers. They funded a 5-day program that we did. And we had an outreach of 1,300 girls in that week from 5 different schools. In Cholo, in Chiradzuru, in Blantyre Rural, I'm not sure if Chukwa was one of the, I think Mulanje was one of them as well. So we went to 5 schools. So the earthquake assimilation tool was, so one of the collaborations was that not only should Malawi bring in, Women's Malawi should bring in their toolkits, but then how do our stakeholders like SWE, Society of Women Engineers, bringing their own toolkits? So they brought an example of an earthquake that had happened here in Malawi in Sanje the year before, and brought an earthquake assimilation toolkit with materials for the girls to create structures that would withstand the earthquake assimilation toolkit. I think it's a Richter scale that was being moved at different earthquake wavelengths for them to be able to know if their structure would stand. And then the winning team we did give them some personalized pens from Virginia Tech and some books and obviously some sweets. They were secondary school students. And so that is some of the external work that we did, was how do we collaborate with external universities, with external organizations that want to collaborate with Women's Malawi. We have the Women's toolkits, but then we also want to reach the 1 million girls in STEM. So how were we able to bridge the two and come and have a mediator? And so that was using both the Women's toolkits and leadership skills together with innovation skills and together with SWE's innovation skills from the female engineers from the United States. Some of the key stakeholders, which was a big part of an element of customer journey line, was to ensure that we have stakeholders. For now, some of the stakeholders that we have collaborated with and continue to collaborate with, obviously the first is our Malawi, the motherboard, the Malawi Institution of Engineers. They have been pivotal to funding women's programs, even for our launch, for our Girl Eng launch, for Hema Lab to come into Malawi, the co-founder of Women's Global. They did provide us with resources as well, which means that the grant did set us off really well, because aside from the leadership training that was done by Nadia in 2017 in August, and also the launch of Women's-Malawi in November, that funding helped us move forward, and also helped us show our seriousness and basically our passion and our drive to Women's Global, to say, yes, we can put Malawi on one of our grants as we're looking towards funding for our organization. Second one has been Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech did ask us to come on board as one of the advisory boards for their ADA program. I'm still working with them. I also work as a student liaison, so I do talk to the students within the program, helping them, obviously, from a student point of view, some of the challenges that international students would have versus a Malawian student attending the same. Of course, Malawi is a different environment from some of the countries that some of the students come through. So that is my role with under the ADA, and obviously the work we have done with Virginia Tech. And Virginia Tech, at the bottom, you see USAID Malawi. Virginia Tech, on several occasions, and currently now, they'll also be applying for another grant for Women's Malawi. And since 2017, they've been continuously trying to find grants to help us, to help run women's programs in Malawi. Rice University has also been one of our good stakeholders. The funding that they provided, and the student engineers that were able to be a part of it. This year I was a part of the final internship program, and as I was one of the speakers at the internship program, the Rice 360 Global Health. Some of our women's fellows did apply, and they're interns. And I was speaking to a group of those, and also talking about the Women's Malawi journey and the Women's Global journey. And they continue to be partners, and now the Rotary Club is one of them. Due to COVID and in-person trainings, we were not able to continue the outreach programs, but we hope that once things simmer down, we will continue doing the outreach programs with Rotary Club. UN Malawi has been pivotal in helping provide, what's the word for it? Pardon. Advertising, partial advertising, and helping Women's Malawi be known on their platform. The U.S. Embassy Education Center recently collaborated with us this year, but now it was supposed to be an in-person training where the students were meant to go to the education center at the offices and attend. This is for female engineers, and not only female engineers, but for other STEM, other women in STEM, such as architects, quantity surveyors, mathematicians. And so what they did is they asked Women's Malawi to provide them with women that could attend the virtual educational programs. These are, and the aim of these programs is to promote education in female engineers, upgrading in terms of master's courses and PhD courses. So this is an interface with United States college institutions that offer engineering programs, that offer STEM masters or PhD courses. And so the female engineers and other women in the industry, other STEM females, what they do is that they have an interface with those universities. They get to ask some of the questions about their GMATs, how do they apply for scholarships. And so this is the collaboration that Women's Malawi has now done with the US Embassy. We've so far done with 2 schools, with Illinois, we have done with Illinois and Texas at the moment. And then we do plan on doing more. And hopefully we can have an in-person one where the females also have an interaction with the education advisors in person. Of course, with UNICEF Malawi, in terms of my role on the advisory board as well for the African Data and Drone Academy, ESCOM and GENCO, the Roads Authority in Malawi, regional water boards, Central, Southern, and Northern, who were able to fund their female engineers for the leadership training that we did in 2018 for them to come. The University of Malawi, MAST, and Luana, setting up female engineering societies in their institutions and working with them in providing mentorship to these engineering students. And now recently, the Black Women in Engineering, as most of you would know this year, in terms of discrimination and racial divide, there's been a lot of talks around that. And so one of the key components, they asked me to be a speaker and talk about being a Black female engineer in the African context, particularly I do not like saying this, but third world country. And so what does that context look like? And talking to the students there. And since then we have done a collaboration with them. They're looking to find funding for us to do a fellowship program in Malawi next year around between May and July. And so there are ongoing talks for them to come and collaborate with us and for them to do outreach programs. And most of these Black, if most people don't know, most of these Black women engineers from the UK, they come from most of the Western African countries, Nigeria, Ghana, I think one from Cameroon, one from Sierra Leone. And so they want to see how they can work with Women's Global through Women's Malawi and start from there and to be able to do women's outreach programs. And so one of them will be done next year. And lastly, you said Malawi, who we are hoping, I think through numerous applications of grants and hoping that we can finally have a grant to run the women's programs in Malawi. Some of the major challenges that we have faced is obviously the demographic location of our leadership team. We're everywhere in Malawi. I particularly in Malawi, in Lilongwe, me and Susan are in Lilongwe. But obviously as engineers, we all have field work, and to find time to have a virtual meeting, find time to actually have an in-person meeting has been difficult. But I would really like to commend my team who have been consistent, and despite challenges in communication, we were able to prepare ourselves, particularly Jen, who was with our Girl Lunch program, who was able to manage that entire program well in terms of budgeting and preparing for that trip, and working together with Letitia and Aditi in finalizing the works that we needed to do for the Girl Lunch program we did under the Catalyst Grant last year in May. And obviously another challenge is volunteer-based works, having to put on our own resources. If you're doing something for volunteer work, there will be a point in time you have to put in your own resources, whether it's something simple as airtime, mobile internet network services, or transportation. Because obviously for me to move, to go out to some of the external work that we did, I had to use my own transportation. Even though it is a passion that we do this work, that there are strains that come to working on volunteer basis. I think one of the issues that we've also faced is registration of organization locally. I think key partly because of the demographic location of our leadership team. And obviously, I think Kenya is the first women's, I would say women's, smaller version of women's that was able to assimilate Women's Global's office setting. And I think with Malawi, the challenge has been to look at what would work for Malawi, not necessarily bringing something exactly similar to what Women's Global is registered in South Africa. And one of the challenges that we're faced with registration is that not being fully registered, but obviously because of our affiliation with MIE, that has been pivotal to our credibility in what we do. But in terms of receiving funding, we have not been able to do that because of registration. We had an instance with UN, the chairperson for the UN Women Malawi, who was looking to fund projects, and she had a budget, and we said, no, we cannot receive funding because we're not locally registered. Financing external local activities outside of Jersey. I think I mentioned that already. Our current impact has been over 3,000 girls in STEM. The number might be higher since I'm not including I haven't really included a lot of the external work that we have done. A majority, we were looking towards rural areas. As you may know, child marriage rates are high in rural areas. And so Lilongwe is the capital city of Malawi. So Kasia is a place in rural Lilongwe. I did an outreach program with an NGO, Plan Malawi. I was one of the speakers. Lunzu, Cholo, Chikwa, Zumango, Chibis have been women's programs that we have done as well. And then the 35 female engineers leadership training that we did for females in the industry from the different firms. I think ESCOM was forgotten, but ESCOM is one of the key stakeholders. And then our 50 women's fellows from the fellowship program that we did. Yesterday, I think Aditi showed one of the photos from our fellowship program that was done in October last year. For the 50 female engineering students, we had over 300 applications, which also showed that there is a desire for more leadership trainings for female engineering students. And unfortunately, only 50 were able to be shortlisted because of the limited funding that we had to maximize. And also because for the fellowship program, in terms of being able to be efficient, we needed to have a small number of fellows. And some of the impact is our work that we're doing with ADA, in ensuring gender diversity and inclusivity in the ADA program, being a part of the innovation competitions. One of the impact, I was one of the speakers at the International Day of the Girl Child. This was sponsored and funded by ESCOM. Using the women's toolkits as well is some of the things that it was a small, brief speech that I did that was using some of the women's global toolkits. And then the Rotary STEM outreach programs and other STEM programs that I've not been able to mention. I believe Women's is the story of the future. The story of the future in that there is an increased participation of female engineering students. I have noticed that they are now, from the Women's Fellows, I have seen there's a desire for more participation in engineering related activities, and also being a part of key developments that are happening in Malawi, fellowships that are happening in Malawi and globally. So I believe that Women is the story of the future. We have had a lot of girls be selected into internship programs, be selected into different fellowships. I think Yali is one of them. Yes, Yali, one of our fellows is going to Yali. The RISE 360, I think there were 2 females from the Women's Fellow, and I think one student that was also from the university that's a part of RISE 360. And so I have in the ADA as well for the African Prize. And recently, I think Grace Ngambi was also a Women's Fellow. I think now, is it with the Royal Academy? I think there's an innovation that an entrepreneurship innovation training that Women's Global is doing that she's a part of as well. So I've seen an influx, an increase in female engineer participation since we started the programs. And obviously, the outreach that is there, the exposure that is there, that they're able to see, whether through newspapers or through social media, when we share what Women is doing, what Women is collaborating with Malawi, there has been an increase in that. And I've also seen that there's been an interest for more gender-based advocacy in STEM from organizations or donors. As you will know, one of the problems, it could be a problem, it could be a good thing, but in Africa particularly, gender-based advocacy is very high. And so funding for those projects do come in a lot. But then I think when Women brings in something different, having a STEM gender inclusivity organization is actually something that we need now more than ever, especially with the coming in of artificial intelligence. And as we're going towards more innovation, and so there's been an increase from different organizations. You said currently we were working towards with the Millennium Challenge Corporation. This is a very big organization that also funded, I think, one of the energy production companies, which is either Ingenco, if not ESCOM. And so recently they did ask us to write a grant. And so it is showing that Women is the story of the future. And now also have more women participation in STEM-based leadership roles. I've seen this from the female engineering students a lot, especially now that some of them are alumni that are working in the industry. I've seen that desire from them, and also from our women's chapter as well, from their participation in all the programs we've done. When they come in and talk about their professions to the girls, I've seen that desire. And we're hoping that will also increase the number of women wanting to have roles in our engineering body. And also one of the key things in women participation is because only 6%, I think yesterday Aditi showed that, of registered engineering professions, which is a process that I'm also going through, I think there are 9, if not 10, 11 out of the 200 and something males. And so I've seen a lot more younger female engineers applying to the Malawi Board of Engineers so that they can also go through the process and be professionally registered, aside from being graduates with engineering degrees. Global outreach and collaboration, it is the women's story, because now the world is small. Now I would tell you that since 2016, I'm good friends with Colosa now. She was one of the ELP members in South Africa. Diana from Women's Tanzania. She's mechanical engineer. I made a first visit to her last year in December. So it just shows that the world becomes smaller, Africa becomes smaller, and we can work together. Now, Colossa now runs a civil engineering consulting engineering firm. I work for a consulting engineering firm, and we do shared notes. So it just shows how small the world is becoming, and women is the story of the future. And lastly, I would have to say thank you, Nadia and Hema, for the New African Dream. I think a story that started in Cape Town as they were students has now grown bigger and will continue to grow. Thank you very much.